There's a moment in your bones when the fire takes over. 'Cause we'll be screaming now. We can be heroes everywhere we go. We can have all that we ever want. Swinging like Ali, knocking out bodies, standing on top like a champion.
Second goal today.
Keep your silver, give me that gold.
Sensational stuff. The rebound can tie.
They can say what they want now. 'Cause we'll be screaming out.
Schweinsteiger from distance. Yes! What a strike!
We can be heroes everywhere we go. We can have all that we ever want. Swinging like Ali, knocking out bodies, standing on top like a champion.
He does it again.
We're unstoppable.
And the Fire lead.
We're unstoppable. We're unstoppable.
Schweinsteiger from distance. Yes! What a strike! Right ahead by Schweinsteiger. Touches around. And now through. Schweinsteiger crosses. Back to Schweinsteiger. Fires! Scores! Bastian Schweinsteiger and the Fire lead.
Please give a big round of applause for Bastian Schweinsteiger. Servus, Basti. Setz dich.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Google. I just said Servus, Basti, which is a way to say hi in Bavaria. Is that right?
That's true. It's typical. It's like I always say when the people ask me, what does it mean? I always say like it's like the Italians say ciao. They say ciao for good morning and ciao for goodbye. That's the same in Bavaria and Munich.
Exactly. I'm from Germany myself, so I'm very excited to have Bastian here at Google. We'll be talking about a few things around Chicago. We're going to take a look back at your career and the hardships and bumps along the way and how we can look forward to the next Chicago Fire season. So in preparation for this talk, we looked through talks on YouTube, and we actually saw that Anna, your wife, former French Open champion and former #1 in tennis, was at Mountain View. So I wonder, did you guys talk about her experience at Google Talks in Mountain View? What did she tell you about Google and the culture?
Yes, we were talking about it, and I remember she was saying that she was very impressed how big the complex is over there, and also she had a good chat over there with the employees. Some of them also are playing tennis, so that was also the subject. And also she was mentioning that she played bowling with the CEO, and that she never played it before, but she made I don't know, somehow she made the strike with the first try. So yeah, she had a good time over there.
Very nice. So Anna is from Serbia. You are from Germany originally. It seems that this city, the second city, has become somewhat of a new home. Would you consider Chicago as your second home away from home? And what makes this city so great for you?
Yes, it's definitely our home for right now, where my wife and our son is, my family is. I call it our home. I must say, when we came over here, I never been at Chicago before. I think once with Manchester United, we came in, we played a game. It was kind of a 12-hour stay in Chicago, but I couldn't see the city. But when we came over here, I remember I like the people on the street, like how they were talking to each other. They had a kind of a humor as well, which I like a lot. And of course, Chicago is a big sports city as well, which matches our family quite well.
I have this weird memory about soccer games, and I think you came here for the preseason game against Paris. So you played here against Ibrahimovic, whom you played again last Saturday. You guys both played at Manchester United. Do you guys say hi? Do you have a short chat, or do you guys meet after the game?
Yes, of course we say hi. But it's kind of like in the game. It's actually funny when you play with a former teammate. When you play against each other, it's tricky because he's a guy which where I admire him a lot. He's one of these players who think about the third option when they play football, soccer, sorry. So usually you have they pass the ball from here to here. Then you have some smart players, they already see the second station, and some they see the third. And you don't have many of those players in the world. And that's why it's very tricky to play against him. But I always try to be smarter than him. And that's kind of a challenge on the field. And it's actually, I don't know why, but actually it was always working quite well. But at the end of the day, he always scored the final goal.
Yeah. It's amazing to see each other. You always see each other twice. If we take a step back and look at 2015, when you signed with the Fire, I wonder, after your steps in Munich and in Manchester United, what was it that you were looking for at your new club? What were factors that you considered before joining your next club? If you can tell us a little bit about the process around that time. Yes,
I remember that I was always interested in the MLS, and then when the possibility came up to play for Chicago, I really was straight interested, because I also like to have challenges in life, and this is a huge opportunity, playing here for Chicago, and also experience a new life as well. It's different than being in Europe, and the league, I must say, it's very interesting. It's still a young league, I have to say, but there's a huge potential for soccer in America, and that were kind of the first thoughts I had. Okay, the Bulls also, Chicago nice. Bulls played also.
We'll touch on American sports later on as well. So you've been playing with the Fire now for 2 years, and you said that you want to help the team become better and do your part to elevate the Chicago Fire. If you look at those past 2 seasons, where do you see the achievements of your time here?
I think especially in the first season, it went quite well for us. We learned new things, tactically things. I tried to give, with my experience I luckily got in Europe, tried to help every guy in our team to get better every single day. You know, sometimes it's just small things who changes the games. And I love when we play as a team on a good level, and I love to see ideas on the field where, you know, when you sit in the stands, you're like, oh, I couldn't see that coming. Yeah. You know, that's kind of my goal, where I try to work on it, try to help the team as much as possible. We had, unfortunately, last year not our best season. We had a lot of injured players from the beginning on, which doesn't make it easier for us. But now I think we have a good team. We are very motivated for this season, and I also must say I love the crowd. The people in the stadium, they are very passionate, but still fair. Yeah. And that's really nice. And yeah, I just hope that we're gonna have a healthy team and also like success.
I truly do not hope, but this might be your last season, possibly. What do you want to achieve this season with the Chicago Fire? What's your goal for this season?
First of all, I did the last 2 years the same. I signed a 1-year deal, and at the end of the day, after the season, I spoke with my wife, and then she says yes or no.
Happy wife, happy life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but my goal for this season our goal is to qualify for the playoffs and be competitive when we play against the little bit better teams. I still believe we can beat everyone in this league if we work on our small details where we have to improve.
Very cool. If we take a look at Major League Soccer in total as a league, you played for the Bundesliga and for the Premier League in the UK. How would you compare Major League Soccer with those 2 top leagues, both from an aspect on the field, but maybe also off the field, if you can draw a few comparisons?
Yes, on the field, I have to say it's a very physical league, the MLS. It's kind of closer, I would say, to the Premier League than the Bundesliga. Some teams are tactically really good. Mm-hmm. They try to do some new things, you know, on the field, and it's really interesting to see. Off the field, I must say, which I love, is you don't have hooligans, let's say, you know. Mm-hmm. So there's no trouble off the field, you know. So that's really a fair audience always. Yeah. When you play away or at home, of course, everyone wants to win, but there's nothing happening around the stadium, which I love because you can go with your family, with your kids to the stadium, have a good time, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to talk to you about that picture over there. We see you with the Gold Cup, the World Cup in your hands. An amazing day of your life, amazing day for me in my life as well.
I'm glad I could make you happy.
Unfortunately, I was here in Chicago. I couldn't celebrate back home, but it was quite all right. My wife took really good care of me. If you think back of that final day, you guys won that semifinal against Brazil, another day that a lot of people will never forget. If you could describe your thoughts and emotions around that World Cup final, if you can take us back to that day and kind of describe, your emotions.
You should not forget that that was 2014, but when I started playing for the national team, I started 2004, and actually every tournament we had, and we had some in between, we always played the semi-final or the final, but we never lifted this golden cup. So, and then when we played a game in the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, and you have the chance to win the World Cup as a first team from Europe in South America, that motivates as well a little bit. But it's, finals are very difficult to play. I remember that Argentina, I
think so.
They had also very good chances, and they could score a goal, and it would be different. But what I remember quite well was when we finally scored the goal. It was like 3 minutes before. It was an extra time, minute 117. It was very tough the minute after that goal, because I remember when this goal happened, and when they put the ball back on the kickoff, I had some tears in my eyes.
Oh, wow.
And you get so emotional. And there was one long ball, and I couldn't see the ball clearly, I must say, so I had to do this and this. So that was not easy, but it's worked out, everything, the hard work, where we started 2004 to until 2014. Sometimes you have to wait. And that was a kind of a moment, yeah.
You mentioned that journey. The World Cups before, in 2006, you were eliminated in the semifinal against Italy. 4 years later, an amazing World Cup that the German national team played, eliminated yet again in the semifinal against Spain. And then once you're so close to that final World Cup, the last 3 minutes, did you have some sort of doubt that this may slip away again? Or are you truly focused, and do you truly believe in this time we're going to get it?
I always believe in winning, and I never give up, and that's my personal character towards the game. And even if we would have been down 1-0, 2-0, you fight until the end, because in football, in soccer, everything is possible. Even in 3-4 minutes, you can change the games, and that's my mindset in every game. But of course, I also knew that maybe this is my last chance to win that trophy. I asked myself, how many times you're going to play the World Cup final more, and it's not 4 or 5 times. So,
can I tell you a secret around the World Cup from my perspective? So your good friend Lukas Podolski,
yes.
He's been one of my favorite players. So since 2006, I had his jersey for every major tournament. 2006, 2008, all the way to 2014. And before you guys made it to the final.
It's okay.
I told my wife and my friends, I'm going to get the jersey with the golden patch of the player that's going to score the final goal. It was not you, Jan, and yet I bought your jersey because I think that was a magnificent performance in the final. A lot of pressure by the Argentines, and just an amazing performance. So there's 5 Podolski jerseys and 1 Schweinsteiger jersey.
Thank you so much.
So when we talk about this achievement, the World Cup, there's another great achievement, which is the Champions League with Bayern Munich in 2013. In my opinion, a similar track. The team took many attempts to make it to the final, lost the final in 2010, yet another final in 2012, but then lifted the trophy ultimately in 2013 in another legendary stadium at Wembley in London. How did your emotions compare to the World Cup there?
It was a little bit different because I remember that we played 2012, the Champions League final in our hometown in Munich, and when you play in front of your home crowd, you don't want to lose a final, but we did in a very unlucky way, I must say. But we lost the final, so the team was down, and then to stand up and straight in the next year and to lift then the trophy, that meant a lot for me. But also, we as a group, we stick together. And I always say that this kind of the defeat against Chelsea at home 2012, that was kind of the basic for the next steps, like 2013, the winning of the Champions League, and also 2014, winning the World Cup. And but 2013, when we played the Champions League final and we won it, finally we played a final against Borussia Dortmund, which is a biggest rivalry for us in Germany, and if we would have lost this game, that would be very, very painful. And in the first 20 minutes when we played this game, there was a lot of pressure in our game. And I asked in the halftime, I asked Thomas Müller and Philipp Lahm, I asked them, guys, did you also feel something the first 20 minutes, some heaviness on your back? And they said, yes, my legs were completely blocked, I couldn't move. Yeah, it's happening, this kind of pressure situations, and you feel that. Luckily, we could get rid of it, and we won the game. It's almost the same like in the World Cup. In the last minute, we scored a goal, which is always better, because then the other team, they don't have 30 minutes more to play, you know? They only have 5-6 minutes. Yeah. So that was the kind of the story about the Champions League final.
So you talked about pressure, especially with those last finals prior to the Champions League title. Your wife Anna at Mountain View talked about mental preparedness in tennis, that it helps her a lot prepare for the games. I wonder if mental training has been a success factor in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about any type of mental training that you would do personally, or maybe even with the team?
So we had mental coaches in our clubs, especially in Munich and also in the national team. I know that some of the players used, or also staff members used the guys over there. I personally, I think that I kind of know what I want, and I'm kind of strong in a way, but also know where I'm weak. So I can really adjust to it quite well, and of course, sometimes also talk to the guy, but not as intensive maybe than other players. But we definitely had the options, and I think it's good to have, because you have players, they need someone to talk to, and maybe you don't have a family or an environment around you, which is ideal for you, And I think nowadays in sport on this high level, you need to have also help a little bit on the side as well. Yeah. Even if you're a tough guy,
Yeah. Very good. I want to touch on one more thing with regards to those finals that you won. Prior to winning those finals, I think there was a notion in the media that, yet again, that golden generation is losing another final. So players like you were almost proclaimed as failed, like they can't make it. Yet these days we have this philosophy with failure as postponed success. And in soccer, I think it's a lot about trophies, a lot about the titles that you win. Do you think that in professional soccer there's more of a movement towards that idea that we should celebrate failure a little more, because that's going to ultimately lead us to success?
Yes, exactly. So I remember in my career, as you said, we lost some games on a big stage, finals and semifinals. We fell down many times, but it's very important to stand up and try to follow your dreams, and having your goals in your mind and being ready. And sometimes you have this kind of moments, not only in sport, also maybe private, where it's not easy to handle your life, but you only have one, and you should try to make the best out of it. And that's what my mindset is. Like, you can fall down, that's not a problem, but it's more important to get up and
stand up again.
Look forward.
Your position is a midfield. It's a leading position on the field. But I would also describe you as a leader of the field for your team. You've been leader Bayern Munich at the German national team. I think that we are a product of the people that we work with and that we live with. You've worked with many players, many coaches at both Bayern Munich and the national team. Who would you say are key figures that shape the leader that you are? And what are lessons that you learned from them along the way?
Oh,
if you don't want to name anyone, that's fine too. I think the lesson piece is the more important one.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky to play with big players during my career, and I had several guys like Oliver Kahn guy, for example, very much believing in his qualities and fighting, motivated, extra hours after the training session. But I always try to kind of get from every great player or leader some small things. I like some things of this guy, some things of this guy, and I try to add it a little bit. But being your own person, that's very important. And I think that you have, as a leader, leader is a strong word in my eyes, but you can not lead a group alone.
Yeah,
you have no chance. So you need a tongue, like more players, 5-6 players who play with the same tongue, who speak with the same tongue. So, and that was very important for me. And still, you have to be a human guy. Like players are not robots. They also have a human side, and you have to also see that. Different players have a different environment. They grew up in a different country, a different mentality, and you have to see all these facts around the players, and that's very complex. But if you want to achieve something, you have to be aware of those kind of things as well.
Definitely, yeah. So if I ask that same question to one of the young players on your team, what is Bastian's leadership style like? What would you say? What are the pillars of you and the team? What's important to you to bring to the team?
I would love that some young player would sit here and give you the answer. I would say that I'm focused. If I do something, I want to do it in a right way. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a German way, I think, as well.
I can see that.
Being on time, disciplined, and motivated, focused. But also having a smile on your face, it's very important, I think. Like we have some sessions where we want to work and we want to get better, but then it's also important to have some funny moments as well, where you can laugh and share some funny jokes as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So here at Google, just to divert a little bit, here at Google we care about technology. We love technology. You played your first game in 2002. I looked up the best-selling or the most-selling device at that point was a cell phone that had a color display for the first time. Now in 2019, we talk to speakers, we talk to our cell phones. And I would imagine that in soccer there has been a similar transformation around technology. I wonder how technology, both during training or in preparation for the game, maybe even after the game, has made a difference in your career.
Yes, throughout the years it became more and more important, and you analyze everything, how many sprints you make, and how long you can run, which distance you can cover, which is for me sometimes weird, because when a guy covers, let's say, you run 14 kilometers, it's okay, average is around 11, 12 kilometers. I don't know in miles now exactly.
I still don't get that right either.
But maybe of your 14 kilometers, you run 7 wrong.
Yeah.
So using your energy for the right things, that is very important, and I think it's going to be more and more important for the next years as well.
Is it important for you to look at those statistics after a game? Does it help you improve the next game, or does it give you any guidance going forward?
Some things are important, for example, also positioning-wise, like maybe the goalkeeper cannot run more than the fullback,
Yeah.
So, but the fullback can maybe run more on a high intensity than a center back. So, there are some stats where you can kind of compare to the top teams in, let's say, in Europe, and I think that's that's definitely a good thing. But you sometimes have also games where you lead in all the starts and everything, but at the end you lose 1-0.
Yeah.
So it's like both sides a little bit.
Very cool. So I could go on and on with my questions. I could have a whole day conversation with you, but I also want to make sure that we can.
My wife wouldn't like that.
I know. She would give the thumbs down. I also want to make sure that the audience is able to address a few questions to you. So I can encourage you to speak to the mic. The mic is actually over there. If you want to head over there and let us know about your questions. Chicago Fire was so generous to provide swag, a few giveaways. There's even tickets involved. So I would encourage you to step up to the mic, ask a great question, and then afterwards we're going to raffle out prizes, so to speak. So why don't we start with the gentleman over there?
Thank you. I'm curious, when you came up with Bayern Munich, I remember you were a wide player. And then I think it was Louis van Gaal who moved you to play center midfield. So I remember watching you when you were young because you always used to beat Man United and it was horrible. And then he moved you to play center midfield, and then all of a sudden you were the most dominant center midfielder in Europe. What was that transition like for you, and how did you make that look so easy?
It's actually easy to give you the answer because I actually grow as a midfield player. So at Bayern Munich in the youth team, so when I joined the club with 14, 13, I started always to play as a midfield player. But as soon as I came up to the second team and to the first team, they put me wide. You know why? Because in the midfield players were like huge players. So we had Michael Ballack, and it's not easy as a young player to step in that role immediately where you have a lot of responsibility, because in soccer, if this is the field, a midfield player plays here. So you're always close to the actions. And there you have to have a player who is experienced, who understands the game quite well. But I was very lucky when, and also happy when Louis van Gaal changed me into the center midfield position, because I shouldn't compare it with my life, my private life, but I like to be in control. So I like to just dominate the game, and I don't like when someone else but if the other opponent dominates the game and I have to follow their ideas. I want to give the ideas, and that's how it is. At home I'm different.
I read a book called The Captain Class, and the German team is featured in it, especially Philipp Lahm is a case study. And they talk specifically about the controversy around when he challenged the board of the team and some of the surrounding fallout from that. Can you talk about maybe some leadership skills you learned from Philipp, and maybe around that time period when I think the board was like, I guess I don't know the full details, but specifically around some of the controversy that he stirred. The book is called The Captain Class, and they do a case study on the German team from 2010 to 2014, and it's specifically around the impact that Philipp Lahm had. Can you talk about some of the leadership skills you learned from him? And
about his leadership?
Yeah, how did you play together with Philipp Lahm?
So I didn't read the book, so that's why I was living. But Philipp Lahm, what's actually funny, the first game I played with Bayern Munich was the same time when Philipp Lahm played his first game. So it was 2002 in November, I remember quite well. And so and also we know us from the youth, so I know him as a person, and he's a great person. He was a great football player as well. But what maybe is a little bit, and what matches quite well, we both kind of like, in a way, are different, but together we were kind of really very strong, and we trust each other a lot, and on the field we could play the balls like this, so it was not a problem at all. And I'm quite sure that also Philipp will take over soon a very important position in the German football association. Yeah.
So one of the things that's happening at Google right now is this review season. So we're all kind of doing our self-evaluations. We're evaluating peers. And I'm curious how you evaluate your own game. What are things that you think you are really strong at, and what's something that you might want to work on?
There are always, every day I think that I can get better. And when I see something not happening like I want, like my brain sometimes want something, but I cannot give it or bring it on the field. It makes me angry. So, for example, I mean, now I'm 34 years old, which is not old, but in soccer you say like it's kind of old. But I told you before, it's not about the age; it's about how many games you played, right? And so I try to be still physical strong. You know, my body is very important, and I know exactly what I need to eat, what I need for the games, what I need for training sessions. So that became through the career even more important. And on the field, I just try to think about ideas which other teams, players don't have right now. So it's to create something new. Of course, it's a game 11 against 11. It's not 1 against 11. But I try to find something where soccer become easier for my team. So if I can compare, for example, with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. So, of course, Pep Guardiola, he was a coach at Barcelona, at Bayern Munich, and Manchester City, which are great clubs. But everywhere he has success, and he dominates the games. And it's not a surprise. There is a plan behind, and there are ideas which are very fascinating to watch and see. And it makes me happy to see when I watch this kind of games and I see some new movements or new ideas, new tactical ways how to play out the other team. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It seems you like the idea of coaching as well. Is this something that you can see yourself doing in the future?
I always say no, because you know why?
Your wife.
No. No. As a coach, you can get sacked,
That's true.
And as a player, it's impossible.
Yeah. Maybe one more question from the
My
audience.
wife is okay.
Speaking about your wife, I know you have your son is almost turning 1 year old, but let's say he becomes, imagine the situation, he's a teenager now, he's either asked to play soccer or tennis. What's he going to play?
Yeah. I mean, he's born here in Chicago, so there are other options as well, right? Play basketball or the Blackhawks, you never know. So I leave it up to him.
Hi, Bastian. It's an absolute honor meeting you. Like, since childhood, I've had two favorite players. One is you and second is Messi. So World Cup 2014 was
Good
very
company.
difficult for me to watch.
So what was the question?
I haven't asked my question yet.
Ah.
So I have two questions. First is, in a football match, there is a lot of drama, a lot of things change very quickly. 1 minute you're losing the match, then you win, penalty. So during a match, how do you keep your calm and peace so that you're able to play effectively? And my second question is, of the current players, who is your favorite player?
The second was of all the Italian players. Or what
The
is it?
current players.
Current players.
Who plays right
Who's your favorite player?
now?
Current players. I mean, there are many out there, but when I recently watched Juventus Turin, I like. You probably will. Do you know Leonardo Bonucci?
The defender.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like this kind of player. Of course, Ronaldo and Messi are amazing. How many goals they score and everything. But I personally think that also players like, I always say, Manuel Neuer, Frank Ribéry were for me the best players I played with. Different position, goalkeeper sounds weird that I would say so, but goalkeeper position is very important, and a center back position is also very important. And
It's surprising that you mentioned defenders. Is this a position you would have liked to play, or could you see yourself playing as a center defender like Bonucci?
I mean, you always drop as a midfield player, you come in this kind of positions, but I think when you have the ball, the game starts many times in the back. So with the goalkeeper or with the center back. And I was asking recently one friend of mine, because we were watching the NHL, and I was asking, like, did ever a player won the MVP award as a defender or goalkeeper? And he said it never happened.
Yeah.
And I'm questioning actually why it's never happening, maybe it will change one day, because I think defenders or goalkeeper or midfield players, they're doing also a great job. It's not always about who puts the ball in the net.
Yeah. You mentioned, if I can interrupt the audience questions for one moment, you mentioned the Chicago sports teams. Earlier on, you associate Chicago with Michael Jordan and the Bulls. You're very active in the sports scene, like you like to go to see the Bulls, to see the Blackhawks. What is your favorite Chicago team, and what do you find most interesting about that particular sport?
So my favorite team, it's easy to say, is the Fire. But,
except for soccer, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But I must say, I never been at an American football game before in my life, and I really enjoyed it watching the Bears, especially last season. And but also the other sports it's very interesting to watch. Ice hockey, for example, even baseball, I never experienced that. So my wife is a huge fan of the Blackhawks, a huge fan. And I must say I also like ice hockey a lot.
So the Blackhawks it is.
Yes, there's only one team, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Why did you pick Chicago Fire instead of other team?
Good question. Because I actually was in a kind of a moment in my life where I tried to, do something else, And in Europe, I always wanted to live the Champions League with Bayern Munich. That was my dream. And then when that happened, I had always Manchester United in my head, in my brain to play for, and that happened as well. And then I didn't want to play for a different club in Europe, and I wanted to move somewhere else. And I think Chicago is a great city, as I mentioned before, and I had good talks as well with our president, Nelson Rodriguez, and also the owner. That time it was one owner, now we have two. And that was the reason why I actually decided then to come over to Chicago.
Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Hi. Chicago Fire just signed Nicolas Gaitan. I was wondering if you had any thoughts into how he'll fit into what you guys are trying to do.
Yes, I also just like 50 minutes ago, or now 1 hour and 50 minutes ago, I got the information. I know him quite well from the Benfica Lisbon time over there, but I never played against him, but he looks like a very talented player. I hope he can help us to achieve our goals, which we have, and I think he's a very good player. You're welcome.
Servus Basti, thank you for making us world champions, by the way. I joined that with the speaker. I moved with my son recently to Chicago as well, and I wanted to ask you privately, what do you enjoy most about the city outside of football?
I enjoy the most out of... I walk a lot with my family around the Lincoln Park area, the zoo. My son loves these animals, elephants and all this stuff. But I also like a lot that here is a lake close by, and you can take, for example, the bikes and then go along the lake. That's beautiful. And very nice restaurants, I think, are here as well. And what else do you like? I love the botanical garden. Have you been?
Yeah, we just went last weekend.
Oh, here we go.
How about Chicago deep dish?
Oh, the trees over there.
How about Chicago deep dish pizza? Are you Luminati?
Yeah, I tried it once, but it's too much.
For the first time when you have it, you think you can eat a whole pizza, but then you realize really quick that one slice is enough.
That's true.
I was actually lucky enough to see you play against the United States in Brazil. During that game, you actually subbed out, so I'm not really sure if you guys are trying or not. You're one of my favorite players. But question about the different leagues you've been a part of. Obviously, two of the top leagues in the world. MLS is obviously up and coming. We'll go back to your son. Say he turns into this amazing soccer player, and he gets to that age where he's 10, 11, 12. You can get picked up by these clubs very early. Would you encourage him to stay with the MLS or seek something across, maybe in Europe?
Whew. It's a lot of if. I don't know. Like for me, first of all, I think that the MLS, if the people who work for the MLS are making the right decisions, you can create a huge league. Like I know that all the players in Europe, they come over to the United States and then go for vacations, and they love the cities over there. And if you can somehow use the opportunity and to use the potential which you have here to create a great league, you can even up, with the leagues in Europe, I think. And of course, it takes some years for sure, but there's a chance. If my son is gonna be in MLS in Europe, I don't know that. I also don't know if maybe he gets the talent, like I'm not good at tennis player, so if he gets my talent from playing tennis, it's not good, if he gets. So let's see how he ends up.
I have another question. So we talked about. We touched on the time after your active career. You said that coaching is probably nothing you would want to pursue. We also talked about Michael Jordan, who played basketball first, and then he turned into a baseball player. One of the things that people may not know is that in your youth, you were actually also a skier. You both played soccer, but also ski, and you pursued both on a quite serious way. Can you tell us a little bit about your youth sport, how you picked soccer over ski, and if
yeah, it's true. My father was a skiing racer, so I actually first time I was on skis. I was like 2.5 years old. So I grew up like close to the mountains. So that was ideal for me, being outside on fresh air. And in winter I was skiing, and summer I was playing soccer. But then there was a moment I had to decide between soccer and skiing, because I got kind of the possibility to move to Bayern Munich when I was 14. And then I had to decide, and it's not easy, at that age to decide. So I made it kind of simple. And when you're a skiing racer, you have to carry, all these skis, and it's always cold outside. Yeah. It's not really enjoyable. You have to get up early and all this stuff. In football, you just take the cleats and you play with your friends, So then I decided for soccer. Yeah.
Awesome. Another question from the audience.
Servus, thank you so much for being here today. I was wondering if there were any special moments from your childhood or your youth that you remember that were important moments for you as a player or as an individual. And I was also curious if you had any thoughts on how the United States might improve their youth programs to be a more competitive nation in the future.
Yes, to your second question, I think there have to be a rule where it says like, okay, in every MLS team in the lineup has to be 3 players from the United States, or in a squad maybe 6 players, and also, for example, Christian Pulisic, he plays for Borussia Dortmund, and but the goal should be for the MLS to keep the American players in the league to make it more popular, and for the people over here. So this kind of rules, I think, is possible to do, but that's how you would you would make the league higher, and also you would keep the idols for the kids in the United States where they can look up to. And to the first question,
childhood moments.
Yes, there was a childhood moment when I was 15 years old. And I was 15, and I got an offer from a different club, and it was not Munich, it was more North Germany, and they offered me a lot of money, and I could train with the first team over there. And I remember that in that time I had, my coach was the son of Franz Beckenbauer. You all know Franz Beckenbauer. He has a son, and unfortunately he died 2 years ago, but I had a good relationship with him, and he told me, look, Basti, maybe you can earn more money over there and you train with the first team over there, but to go through the youth team in Bayern Munich will give you more, and as a player and as a person, and I did that. So, and I'm very, very happy that I had a voice to talk to in that moment.
Well,
good choice.
Hi, Bastian. Can you please talk
nice
about
jersey, nice jersey.
Thanks. Oliver.
Oliver Kahn, here we go.
Can you please talk about how you prepare on game days physically and especially mentally, like for big games, finals matches? What's your process, before you walk out onto the field?
Yes, before actually it starts during the week, but I always try to eat the right way 2 days before the game, so I have a lot of energy. And but then also like before I go to bed, a day before the match, I always try to imagine, how the game could be. I always ask our kitmen, in which jerseys are the opponent playing, and in which jerseys are we playing, so I can imagine we have red and Borussia Dortmund plays yellow, for example, and then I try to think about all the players on the field, what's their strengths, what is their weakness, what do they like. Some they don't like to run with the ball, some they like to run with the ball, so this kind of things, to be ready for the moment when it happens, and actually before it happens that I'm ready. And I do this all the time.
Thank you.
This is probably one of the talks at Google with the most questions from the audience. So thank you very much.
Yeah, hi Basti, thanks for the opportunity. I'm also a huge fan of Bayern Munich and yourself. I moved to Chicago a year ago from Germany too, and I'm interested to know what do you miss most about Germany? And also you have played many games that went all the way to penalties, and yeah, you've shot many penalties, and I would like to know, what do you think when you go to the ball? Are there any thoughts at all, or are you just cool enough to go and shoot?
Yeah, usually the Germans always win penalty shootouts. I actually only lost the one 2012 in the Champions League final, unfortunately. But when you walk from the halfway line, from the middle line towards the ball, it can happen that you lose your. There are too many kids here, I can't say that, but you get a little bit like nervous, which is normal, right? And but it's very important that you know what you're going to do in this kind of moments. It's very important to you analyze also the goalkeeper before, maybe if you have the chance. If you're the first one, you're a little bit unlucky, but that always helped me, and have the power in your mind, to take that shot and to take the responsibility. But it's sometimes when you have 80,000 people around you and they boo you, it's not easy, that's true. Or it is quiet. I don't like when it's quiet. Sometimes so quiet you can hear everything dropping, So, and the other question was what I'm going to miss. There's a special food. It's called Kaiserschmarrn. I don't know. You probably know it, right?
How would you describe it?
It's a pancake, a thick pancake, but cut it, and then you have
a scrambled pancake in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I loved actually when I was skiing races. So this kind of food was always available on the mountains.
From the mountains.
Exactly. But I missed that one. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm nervous coming up to the mic like a penalty kick. So this is my husband, Stefan, and thank you so much for making this dream come. I'm 8 months pregnant, so I'm also very emotional. But thank you so much for making his dream come true. And okay, so I want Stefan, this is for you to give Basti a little break to drink some water. Stefan, can you share a little bit about how this moment came about and like what the idea that sparked it?
Yeah, it's actually, Google is an amazing place. You come to Google and you see talks at Google and how your colleagues bring in writers and authors. So it's a very empowering culture to just give it a shot and try to reach out to the Chicago Fire and see if your favorite player could come in for a talk. So in that sense, I'm really happy to be here to embrace that Google culture, and I'm just very happy to have you here.
Come on, now.
I also, so what she's referring to is a moment in our life when you signed at the Chicago Fire. It was a week before my son was born. A week after my son was born, I went to your first game at Toyota Park back then, and I got him a Germany jersey, hoping that you could sign it one day. And I tried really hard. I set my mind to do it, and maybe after this talk, you can give one more signature.
No problem. We're gonna do that. And for the next one as well, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, one of the things you mentioned is that 14, you already were going for Bayern. And I mean, what's it like knowing from like a teenager, like having kind of a bit of a plan and then doing it, like getting the Champions League and then playing for Manchester United and stuff like that, having that course set, and then, I mean, what's it like knowing that from such a young age and having that course set, and then once you got all this done, what was it like then having to face what to do next?
Yeah, first of all, you know, I'm very grateful to have actually the chance, you know, to got picked from out of 1,000 young players to play for Bayern Munich when I was 14. So, and I remember that, or I'm playing soccer because I like the game and I have fun every single day. When I go right now or tomorrow, I'm going to go to a training session again, and I just love the game, being outside there. All these things, what happens around, it happens anyway, so you cannot affect it. So, but of course, when you lift this trophy or you lift the Champions League, you know, like you ask yourself, okay, what's next, you know, like, and I always try to find an answer in kind of like challenges, you know. That's why I also came here. I wanna help the Chicago Fire to be one of the champions, you know, to be winners, and that's why I try to give to everybody in the club, and hope that once it's going to happen.
Here at Google, we like a challenge. We're problem solvers. So if you want to consider this as your first Google interview, we can go from here and schedule another one.
Okay, all right.
I want to wrap this up because we get close to the hour mark. Bastian, thank you very much for coming in here. There will be another game this Saturday against the Seattle Sounders. So for everyone who... I was going to switch this, but it doesn't switch. Anyways.
Here we go.
So we wish you all the best for this.
Shouldn't be so easy, difficult, right? Just press this button.
We wish you all the best at this coming game against Seattle Sounders. Thank you so much for coming in, answering tough questions, and spending a little time with us. We do also have a little jersey exchange. So this is something that we would like to give you from the Chicago office.
Perfect.
Again, thank you very much, and this is for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.